There's a way for you to support type 1 diabetes research and the Juicebox Podcast. And you can do that through the T1D Exchange. The T1D Exchange is looking for type 1 adults and type 1 caregivers who are U.S. residents to participate in a quick survey. As a parent of a child with type 1 diabetes, I've taken the survey, and it only takes a few minutes to complete. And the questions are not deeply probing or overly personal. They're pretty basic questions about living with type 1. The process is 100% anonymous, completely HIPAA compliant, and does not require you to ever see a doctor or go to a remote site. With the data that the T1D Exchange collects, they've helped to bring increased coverage for test strips, Medicare coverage for CGMs, and they've helped to implement changes in the ADA's guideline for pediatric A1C goals. I find it really exciting to imagine what my participation may lead to. But they need help. They need people's data. They're looking for up to 6,000 respondents. So just my data alone is not going to be enough. Every time someone completes the process, if you use my link, t1dexchange.org/juicebox, the podcast will benefit. So if you're looking for a way to help type 1 research and the podcast, this is a simple way to do both. And it's really valuable. So get involved. Go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. There's links right there in the show notes of your podcast player or at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you get there, click on Join Our Registry Now. And after that, simply complete the survey. I want to thank you for your help and get the show going. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 417 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, we have Skylar. Skylar is an adult living with type 1 diabetes who's living in Australia, but is from Oklahoma. And that makes for a very interesting accent, and Skylar makes for a really great episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I have a little time here, so I'd like to remind you that if you have a great doctor or need one, check out juiceboxdocs.com. Send me your favorite diabetes practitioner, and we'll add it to the ever-growing list from all around the world. That way, when people need a great doctor, they know where to look. juiceboxdocs.com. And if you're looking for those diabetes pro tip episodes, they begin at episode 210 right there in your podcast player, where you can find a list of them and even listen online at diabetesprotip.com. All right, here we go. This is it. Here comes Skylar.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, good morning.
I might just turn you up a little bit.
Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
There you go. I have this, it's just one setting, and no matter how many times I put it to where I want it, it puts itself back. So I stopped arguing with it a while ago, and I just go do it myself.
Yeah, technology is great when it works.
Yeah. I felt that way about my uncle. A little weird. Anyway, hi, good morning. What time is it? Where are you at?
I'm in Queensland, Australia, so it's 11 p.m. here.
Wow. Well, good evening to you then.
Yes.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say good morning to you.
Thank you. I have to tell you, this is my second Australian interview in like the last 5 days.
Really?
The podcast is oddly popular in Australia.
Yeah. It was actually recommended to me by an Australian Facebook group, so.
No kidding. That's lovely. There was a person who once tried to bring me to Australia, but we couldn't quite raise the funds to ship my carcass on an airplane. And it was one of those weird things where I was like, am I going to fly 20 hours to talk to people for 3 hours and then fly back? I was like, that doesn't seem to make sense.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we were.
No, those flights are terrible.
See, that's what I thought too.
They are. You do not think, that your bum can hurt sitting, but it can.
It just seemed like a bad idea. Like logistically, it seemed like a bad idea. The idea itself was lovely, and I was excited to try to do it, but that's just crazy. I would have to build some sort of a vacation around the idea, and then
yes, most definitely,
and then do that while I was there. And if I did that, I told the person too. I was like, let's just do like days of it. Like, let's not just do a couple of hours. Let's bring people together and like do giant Q&As and workshop and stuff like that. And I was like, I can't just come down there and be like, here's what I think, and then leave. I was like, I could do that over Zoom for you. If, that'd be easy. I've done it before for Japan and a couple of other places where you jump online for a couple of hours and, Anyway, that seems nuts.
I think it'd be, I think there'd be a lot of interest in it if you were to come over here and do workshops and the like.
I believe that too. I just don't know. Like I said, one day I have to be, first of all, I record all this. So, if you go off crazy, like understand that I'll take it out. But in a minute, you'll just introduce yourself any way you want to be known, and we'll start talking. So I was going to say, why don't we do that now so that we don't waste any good conversation?
All good. Okay, just let me know when.
It's okay. Sorry. It's funny. Some people launch right into it, and some people are like, wait for the go, and it amuses me to figure out who's who. So you can go whatever you want.
Okay, so my name's Skylar Cox, and I live in Australia. And I use MDI, manual daily injections, to manage my diabetes.
That's interesting. You call it manual daily injections?
Yeah. I know some people call it mini daily injections.
Multiple is what I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard multiple as well. I think they're interchangeable.
When you said it the way you did, I thought, oh, that works too.
Yep. I think I've heard both interchangeably here.
I think many is it seems more ominous. Like multiple just makes it feel like there's going to be more than two. Many is just like, oh, you want to keep your blood sugar down? You're going to inject many times.
I guess it depends on the mood you're in for the day.
That's great. Oh, I didn't realize we were going to get off to such an auspicious start. Thank you. So you said, as we were kind of warming up, you said that you found out about the podcast in a Facebook group?
Yeah. So I think it was Australians living with type 1 diabetes or type 1 diabetes support group Australia. Those are the two main ones that I know about.
Right. That's very nice. I once had this long conversation with a person from Australia while I was watering newly planted trees in my yard. I remember having headphones on and my phone, and we couldn't seem to figure out how to speak because I guess it's not as easy to call internationally for some people as it is for others. So I was under the impression that at this point we were all just allowed to call wherever we wanted, but it ended up being really difficult. And we may have actually used Facebook audio to talk to each other, is that something pretty common for you guys?
Yeah, I have personally found that it is a lot better to use Facebook Messenger to call people overseas than it is to actually use the phone for whatever odd reason.
Yeah, well, that's what we did. And I got on the phone with this person, and they had been a fairly, I believe, lifelong diabetic, and were having really like terrible outcomes. And it's always interesting when someone reaches out to you and they're sort of persistent. They're like, I really wish we could talk. And I was like, all right, well, if you don't mind the sound of spraying water, I'm happy to, have this conversation. And you get on the phone or even sometimes on the podcast. I mean, you guys maybe can tell sometimes in the episodes, like sometimes someone starts speaking and I think, ooh, this is more than I bargained for. And at that point, you're in. And anyway, that person ended up doing really well. And it was exciting because, like I said, there'd been a long distance of time with a lot of trouble, and it was nice to be able to help. So maybe that one good deed got all the way around Australia. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's likely. It is likely.
You guys have like a real thing of telephone going on there where you just, one person says something and tells another person. And I mean, in my mind, Australia is like as big as what? I don't know.
Well,
a state?
It's actually approximately the size of America, actually. A lot of people don't realize that.
Is that the map thing where the map is drawn in a weird way for navigation? Have you ever heard that the world map is, this is like the second time I'm bringing this up now, and don't know anything about it, but I was joking. Australia is huge, and it's interesting, but on the world map, it doesn't in any way seem so.
Yeah. I think I actually learned in human geography a few years ago that depending on what kind of dimensional map you use or whatever, some countries are a bit more squished, look smaller, and generally Australia does tend to get the brunt end of that. Makes it a lot smaller than what it actually is.
I feel like there's another country near you that sometimes gets left off of maps too. I remember hearing about. All right, anyway, this is not a topography podcast. If it was, it would be the worst one ever.
No.
People would be like, wow, I'm on this topography. And they don't seem to know anything about maps. Anyway, Australia, really big place. I'm going to reference back for a second to a recording that I just did that no one's heard yet with another person from Australia who sort of outlined a fairly bleak view for me of how a lot of people there diabetes is managed. Are the haves and have-nots healthcare wise pretty obvious there?
Yes and no. I'd say Australia is really, really blessed with the public healthcare system when it comes to being a diabetic. But at the same time, we don't have access to up-to-date technology. So, for example, insulin, for a script of insulin, 25 300 ml pens cost you $41 flat out.
Wow.
To anybody. But in saying that, we may not have access to all the insulins available, such as Tresiba, and test strips are subsidized. So they're $15 flat rate for 100 strips for a person not on a healthcare card. But your CGM devices actually aren't subsidized for people who are basically working enough to not be on a healthcare card and they're over the age of 21. And it's not covered by private health insurance here either. So you're having to cover the brunt of that out of pocket.
Is healthcare card a way of saying government assisted?
Yes.
Okay.
It's kind of the equivalent to the Medicare card in America.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep. So I think the Danny Foundation is a big advocate group over here, trying to raise awareness to the government as to why CGM devices need to be subsidized for every type 1 diabetic. And that's actually how I currently have my CGM. It's a scholarship through them.
Interesting. Wow. And you're younger, am I right? How old are you?
I am 22 years old.
See, that sounds younger, and to me, like with numbers, but you have a more mature voice. So if you told me you were 35, I would have just been like, all right.
Okay, then I'm 35. I'll take 35.
Would you really? I would too, just in case you're wondering. Yeah. No, you mentioned a course a moment ago, and I would think that anyone who heard you say I learned in a course, but heard your voice would think, oh, this lady's gone back to school. That's lovely. She's probably trying to better herself. But you're definitely younger. So what were you studying in school?
Yes, I am. I'm currently enrolled in uni. Actually, my last test is tomorrow. It opens up online at 2:30 p.m. Has to be online because of all the coronavirus.
Are you going to cheat?
No.
You sure?
Even though it is open book. It is open book now.
I was going to say everything is. Let me ask you a serious question for a minute, Skylar. If you were going to cheat, would you tell me?
Yeah.
No kidding. Good for you. I think that I've watched two kids, one go completely through high school and one now halfway through high school and, a Corona couple of months. And I think that we're teaching our children how to collectively come up with answers unintentionally. So I'm seeing a lot of kids. They talk to each other. They have text chains going. They have all kinds of messaging. They're talking about their homework in the class. They're not talking about the learning, interestingly, and it's not a good thing, but they are talking about the problem solving aspect of it. And so while I don't believe that a lot of American children are going to know who William Burr was, I do think they're going to know how to pull together 6 of their brightest friends and conquer anything. So I think it's a very unintended thing. I used to think of it as we're teaching our children to cheat, but now I don't see it that way any longer. Now it looks like really good adult tools to have. But yeah, the way people can communicate so quickly, like if you were taking you were doing something in school, remembering back when you were even younger, and you couldn't get the answer and you had to get on your bike and ride to a friend's home to, find out the answer. You wouldn't do that. You'd be like, I'll figure it out. But when you can text somebody and be like, hey, real quick, answer 7, what is that? People do that all the time. So anyway, I would cheat if my test was online, just so you know. I just want to be very clear about that. I was about the worst student ever, and I would have taken the easiest way out possible, which ironically, looking back now at this podcast, this whole podcast exists because I wanted the easy way out of diabetes. So,
Yeah, I never really had that issue growing up because my family was a bit slow to get up to date with your technology. So my household didn't actually have a computer until I was just entering high school.
Wow.
I didn't have a phone available to me until my junior year. Consistently anyways. So, and I was socially awkward on top of that. So, I wasn't really connected enough to be able to get away with that.
I want to know how you were socially awkward, but before you tell me, I want to point out that you paused right after you said slow. You said, my family was a little slow, and there was this pause, and I thought, is she going to tell me that her parents are stupid or that they didn't get the technology quickly? Like, I couldn't tell where you were going to go, and you said you'd be honest about cheating, so I was like, oh my God, this is going to take a dark turn, but it didn't. How were you socially awkward? How does that manifest in your life?
I'd say that I was just never really concerned with talking about superfluous things. I didn't really care about who was dating whom or, the latest trend or whatever. I was more interested in talking about more pertinent subjects, and nobody really wanted to engage in that kind of depth of conversation.
Can I ask, do you find yourself at gatherings? I don't know if you remember gatherings. It used to be people would all get together in the same place and talk with each other and eat food and things like that. But back when that happened, do you feel like, do you ever have that feeling like, oh, I don't want to be here because the conversations aren't where you want them to be? And when you try to take them to where you want them to be, it turns everyone else off. Has that ever happened to you?
Not really.
No.
Because nobody ever really talked to me, just to be honest. I was just always kind of on the outskirts of those gatherings, prom nights or whatever. I only went because my mother wanted to do my makeup and put me out there. And so I just kind of wander around the tables and sort of eat some of the candy.
Your mom was pimping you out so she could practice makeup? She's like,
oh,
you get out there and do things
yes.
you don't want to do so that mommy can figure out this eyeshadow.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, it even got to the point where, she was bound determined that I was not going to wear my glasses to my high school prom. And so, because I can't wear eye contacts, I went without my glasses, so I could not see anything. So needless to say, I ended it about 30 minutes in.
Was that so that you'd find a boy? Is that what she was thinking? Or
yeah, my mother really, she tried to hook me up a few times.
Would your mother say bloke if she was talking about it to you, or is that not Australian?
Well, I'm actually American, living in Australia.
You ruined the whole pot. No, I'm just kidding. That's fine. Where were you born?
Oklahoma.
Where the wind comes whistling down the lane?
Sweeping down the
Sweeping. Damn it. God damn it. Can we do that again? Where the wind comes sweeping down the lane? Is that the place you're talking about, Skylar?
No. Sweeping down the plains.
Damn it. Hold on. Third try. Is that the place where the wind comes sweeping down the plains?
Yes.
Oh, I thought so. Well, I do know that the waving wheat smells sweet, so I've got you there. But so how old were you when you moved to Australia?
18.
Oh, hell, that wasn't that long ago.
No, not terribly.
Why'd you bug out?
Pretty much my entire independent adult life.
So you're not there with your family. Your family's in Oklahoma?
Yep.
Oh, this is interesting. Okay, let's get into this. What makes you leave Oklahoma and go to Australia? Is it that your mom would dress you up like a hooker and send you outside to find a boy?
No, I found my own boy and he happened to be in Australia.
Ah, gotcha.
But there were a few other things because the decision was he either moved to America or I moved to Australia. So there were a couple other deciding factors in that.
And he talked to you even though you wore glasses?
Yes.
What a progressive guy.
Oh, he actually prefers me with my glasses. He finds it weird without them on.
I was joking. I think that calling him progressive seemed ridiculous to me. So you meet, okay, hold on. How do you meet a boy from Australia in Oklahoma?
Well, we had a shared interest in prehistory, so fossils.
Ah, that's right. You like the bones of things that have been dead for quite some time that get stuck in rocks. And that's
one way to put it.
Thank you. I like to, as you know from listening to the podcast, I'm very good at boiling things down to almost simple. And by simple, I think I mean, really, really, really simple terms. I don't know enough big words to say anything another way. But you had this interest together, but he wasn't in Australia. Did you meet online?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. But not through a dating website. It was actually through the Fossil Forum. So it's actually a pretty well-meaning forum. The people are very respectful. You have a lot of scientists on there, a lot of avocational paleontologists that have contributed a lot to science and the such. And it just kind of fell in place from there.
It'd be great if they changed it to Fossil Forum / dating app because where else are you going to meet other people who enjoy fossils? That's not something you can bring up on your own.
No, we actually have another mate. He's looking for a girl, and we always joke, well, you need to go to the Fossil Forum because he's also interested in fossils.
I think it's a reasonable decision, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, so you guys meet on the Fossil Forum, which we're getting very close to calling this episode Fossil Forum. I don't know if you've noticed or not. That's only because your parents didn't end up being stupid when the simple thing came up earlier. And so he's in Australia, you're in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is not a bad place to, what would you call it when you're looking for fossils? There's a word for it, right?
Not really. It's just called fossil hunting or fossil collecting.
Okay. And is that something you did as a child, like in high school?
Yep. I used to go to Black Cat Mountain in Oklahoma to look for trilobites.
You say that again because I don't know what the hell you're talking about there. Look for what?
So trilobites, they're kind of like these pill bug looking things that used to live before the dinosaurs in the oceans.
And the fossils look swirly? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Sorry. Pill bugs, roly polies.
Oh, okay. I found it. Don't worry. I can't believe that. I can't believe that based on what I just typed, Google knew I was trying to say trilobite. It's fascinating. Wow, that algorithm works amazing because I was pretty far off. Okay, so these things are weird. And so you'd go out looking for these. Did you actually find these?
Yeah, quite a few.
Wow, that's pretty cool. How old are they? And how do you tell?
Geez. I think the Black Cat Mountain site has been dated to like around 405 million years old.
Wow, that's really kind of cool.
I think around that anyways. Before the dinosaurs came to play.
That's amazing. I'm a little lost in what you're showing me here. That's really cool. How old were you when you were diagnosed with type 1?
Well, see that bit's a bit confounding to my doctors. I have been showing symptoms for probably about 2 or so years before I was actually diagnosed. And they reckon that those 2 years may have been the honeymoon ending before I actually got diagnosed. And when that ended, that's when I finally went in and got properly diagnosed. So I was officially diagnosed August 13th of last year. But blood tests back in January showed that I was clearly diabetic, but that was missed.
Oh.
And it's... And I've had symptoms since before that. So the idea is I was in my honeymoon before I was actually diagnosed. And at the end of that is when it actually got bad enough that I had to go in.
I see.
And get properly diagnosed.
Gotcha. I have a lot of questions about that. But first, this will stick in my head if I don't ask this. You said, I reckon. That's from Oklahoma, right? Not from Australia, using the word reckon. Do you know?
I'm not sure.
That's not a colloquialism from Australia and from the...
I mean, I have colloquialisms that aren't really from either place. It's just from reading a lot too.
Gotcha. I thought you were going to say from being in the desert by yourself, or in the mountains by yourself, but you make up words, Scott, after you're out there for a while. So I have a ton of questions. So first of all, you were diagnosed about a year ago. So around the time you were 21, and you had been in Australia for obviously about 3 years, and you still shacked up with this guy, or have you gotten rid of him? Is he still in the picture?
Nope. He's still in the picture.
Good for you. Very nice. So you guys are together doing your thing. He about your age?
He's a bit my elder.
Oh. Do you want to tell me about that, or are we going to leave that out?
He's 6 years my elder.
Ooh.
I know some people like to preliminarily judge against that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking good
quite
for
a
you.
few people.
No, no kidding.
Yeah, no.
How so? Because I was thinking good for you because he's probably already got a job.
That did help with me moving over. Well, a lot of people think, that is too big of an age gap. And to be fair, it is with the mentality of some people, especially, across different generations. But we were born in the same generation.
Yeah.
And, being from different countries anyways, we had some differences we had to work through. We dated long distance exclusively for 3 years.
Right.
Yeah, 3 years. So we kind of got through a lot of those differences. And also, my father, for example, knew that I was always going to go for somebody older than myself due to just my mentality, I guess.
Well, I would think if you're looking for conversation, it might be hard to find at 22 years old with another 22-year-old. I kind of half brought up earlier, I'm not good at some get-togethers. If I don't like having, I'm not good at just basic conversation. Like I can't just sit around and talk about cars or boobs with guys. Like I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so when I try to speak about the stuff that I'm interested in, I see most people's faces glaze over and I'm like, okay, no one cares about this but me. That's fine.
Yep.
And then you can get into another space where you are with like-minded people, and it's obviously a much different conversation. But in a lot of those situations, I just find myself like sitting there thinking like, oh, I wonder when I can get out of here, because nobody cares, and I just can't do it. Like
I share those sentiments.
Yeah, I try, but I can't. And I will come off as judgmental if I get into those conversations, if I don't stop myself, or if I'm not aware of it and stop myself. Just like, I'm like, how long can we possibly talk about this? You know, I mean, the Sixers are doing great. Let's move on.
Yep.
I don't see why we need to break this down. I'm like, I don't work at ESPN. I don't, no one cares what I think about this guy's work ethic. How is this what we're talking about? So anyway,
precisely.
The world's falling apart around us. Maybe, no? Okay. All right. Let's talk about Joel Embiid for 10 more minutes. Anyway, point is, don't love it. And I get it. Like, I get wanting to be with, I can see how it would shake out to age. With me, Kelly is just, she's so much smarter than I am that like she grades out as an older person. So even though she's a little younger than I am, you know, I could talk to her. I'll tell you right now, when people ask, like, what were you looking for in a person? Even when I was in my early 20s, and I don't even know where I got off believing someone would, like, make a baby with me at that point, but I thought, I really do want somebody who I think will be a solid parent. That seemed very important to me. And I wanted someone I could talk to. Like, I really, I know that sounds like, I don't know, like I'm making that up. But it wasn't to me. Like, I want to be able to say something deep to someone and have them pause, consider it, and respond, not stare through me. So I just,
yes, exactly. Yeah. That's the key thing, I think, to a relationship, is finding somebody that you can communicate to, you know, on your deepest passions, you know, interests and everything, and have them communicate effectively back with you.
Yeah.
And that's really where my husband Troy and I come in. You know, fossils bind us together, but we also have a love for nature and history and the like.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's excellent. Yeah, his age didn't interest me as much, like, in a salacious way as it did in the idea that that made sense to me, because how could you relocate from Oklahoma to Australia if you didn't have some sort of stability when you reached Australia? And I don't know how 3 years or 4 years ago, I don't know how like a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old person could offer you stability to move across the world. So I wasn't, and you didn't seem like a person who was just going to be like, woo, let's do it and just see what happens.
No, there was a lot of paperwork, and the like that I had to go through.
Yeah. Well, okay. So do you do fossil collection, which I guess is called anthropology? Am I right? Did I get that
Paleontology.
Right? God damn it. Where the wind comes sweeping down the plane. I hear it. So paleontology, is that a hobby, or is it a profession, or is it a future profession? Like, how do you see all that?
We like to call it avocational. So we're a bit more invested than your hobbyists, but not to the point where we're professionals. So we're friends with the Queensland Museum curator, and we kind of work in tangent with him to identify our finds and to eventually work on allocating our collection to the Queensland Museum when we're ready to pass it on.
Okay. Is your studies at university, are they focused on paleontology, or what are you studying?
Nope. I'm actually studying nursing.
Perfect. That makes total sense. Okay. So I was being sarcastic. So you found your way into a nursing track before you had type 1?
No, I actually decided to change after my diagnosis.
Gotcha. What were you doing prior to that?
Biochemistry.
Wow, that sounds incredibly difficult. I'm sorry, I just got the chills thinking about taking a biochemistry class. So are you close to being a nurse? Are you getting there? Is that what this last test is for? Are you going to be a nurse after today?
No, unfortunately. I still have 2.5 years.
Oh, okay. So you get in like a basic, like an undergrad, and then you're going to go to nursing school? Is that how that works?
No, 2.5 years and I'll be a nurse.
Ah, okay. All right. I'm trying to dig out the why. Does it take 6 years to be a nurse, or is it because you spent the first couple of years on a different track and then switched?
Yeah, pretty much. So I started university in America right after high school.
Mhm.
I had a year under my belt studying biochemistry, and then I decided to move here to Australia, partly because uni is a lot cheaper here. It's $8,000 a year versus $40,000 a year.
Wow, you were getting college for 40? It's a good deal. Here in
Yeah,
America.
yeah. I was working over 40 grand a year.
Wow.
And anyway, so I moved over here and then I went to go through and finish biochemistry. I had about 2 years left and then got diagnosed and realized that I didn't have any particular direction
Right.
with that degree. And I felt nursing afforded me a more direct pathway.
Good for you. That's wonderful. So I guess there's two ideas I want to understand. So you're you're doing MDI. Did we meet because in the Facebook group I was asking for people who are doing really well on MDI?
Yep.
That's how that happened, right? So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what's your management style, and what does that mean that it's working out really well? This is super simple and super quick. I'm just stopping back to remind you about the T1D Exchange. Please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Fill out their survey, and when you do, you're supporting type 1 diabetes research and the podcast. Super simple way to do good things for people living with type 1 and help out yours truly keep this podcast going. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Took me about 7 minutes to fill out the survey. It's 100% HIPAA compliant. It's 1,000,000% anonymous. And it's definitely going to do good things for people living with type 1. t1dexchange.org/juicebox.
I am typically between 92 and 98% time in range. I don't really have any highs above 8.5. I try and keep it under 7.2 millimoles. So what is that?
I got you here. 8.5 would be around 150-ish, a little more. 7.2 is about 130. So your highs are about between 130 and 160-ish.
Yeah, I consider 130 a high.
Okay.
I will actually act at 6.5, which I think is 117.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll actually act at that point. And then my lows I consider 70. That's my action point anyways.
Okay. I like that.
70 to 130. But I act on 117 and whatever 4.4 millimole is.
4.480.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So I'll start kind of eyeing it off around the 80 mark, if it's dropping or not. But if it's just leveling out, then I'll just kind of let it sit there if it's not like a pressing concern.
Are you using a glucose monitor of any kind?
Yep. I'm using the CGM provided to me by the Danny Foundation. It's the Medtronic one.
Mm-hmm. Very common. So, that's the commonly available CGM in Australia, isn't it?
No, I'd say Dexcom is actually more prevalent. But in saying that, I have tried the Dexcom, and the Dexcom wasn't as accurate for me. Now, given that's on the older versions, we still don't have the G6 out here yet.
Yeah. What were you using, like the G4?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, and we're almost to 7, honestly. So.
It's which is just crazy.
It really is. I'm wearing something right now. Actually, this is my last few hours with it. I'm wearing the Dexcom Pro right now.
I heard about that. It sounds like it'd be a good diagnostic tool.
It is, and it's been an interesting been interesting 10 days, seeing my blood sugar, excuse me, and how my body reacts to different scenarios. And it's fascinating. Like, it really is. There's just things that move my blood sugar around that I would have never imagined away from food. So even though
you have no idea how tempted I am to put one on my husband to see his, because each time I prick his finger, he's at a perfect 100.
just constantly 100.
Oh yeah, just constantly, either 4.8 or what's 4.8, like 85.
No, I didn't know we were going to do that again.
No,
It's
not
it's
quite.
about 80,
Yeah.
87-ish, like right in there.
Yeah. So yeah, he's just constantly always in there. It's like, okay, well, I kind of want to see what's going on behind the scenes. You want to be my guinea pig?
I'll tell you, the one thing that fascinated me more than anything is that when I go outside in the heat and work, my blood sugar tends to go up. With or without food, doesn't matter. And not go up a ton, not the way people with type 1 think of going up. It would go up like 10, 15 points. But when I was really active or working outside, especially in the heat, my blood sugar would go up a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because your body would be utilizing more glucose, so it'd be elevating.
I'm assuming there's like a little control guy inside of me that's like, oh, this fat ass is going to try to do something strenuous. He needs help. And they just, hand over a little bit of glucose to make it happen. But I've tried eating well beyond my desire to be full to see what happens. And it still, my blood sugar won't go over like 140 something. And I mean, like,
yeah, I envy you. See, with doing MDI, I have tried pushing myself and basically subjecting myself to my own experiments, so I will sit there and, I'll have my relatively healthy food days, and then I'll have my days where it's like, I will just gorge out on carbs to see how much I can push myself with this. So it's, while I envy your perfect sugar levels, at the same time, I find it engaging to be able to experiment with my own, because they actually do fluctuate a little.
No.
I do actually have to do the process of elimination to figure out what's actually causing what.
Oh, I think it's amazing to do that. I think it's how you come to bigger answers and how you can then eventually take care of food in a way that you want that could be problematic. Because if you know what the problem's going to be, then you know how to act on it before it becomes an issue. And
exactly.
Yeah, I've been really fascinated.
Call me crazy, but I actually find it, diabetes is the one chronic illness that you can actually sort of play around with and see your results in lifetime. So I actually, in some morbid way, find it fun.
Well, you like digging around in rocks looking for things that have been dead for a long time, so I'm not judging you past that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, I don't make sense anyway, so.
Well, to one guy you did. That's good enough. I keep flashing back and thinking, like, what did your dad expect painting up his daughter and sending her out into the world was going to happen?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
He was a bit uneasy, but he trusted my instincts. He knew that I was very cautious, reasonable. I was going to see from the outset with any relationships, my motto has always been go for character, not beauty, because beauty fades, character remains. So yeah, that's always been sort of my prerogative when looking at a relationship. And so I didn't really,
in fairness,
go ahead.
I only know one thing about Oklahoma. Those people are incredibly scared to drive in any kind of inclement weather. And it was a huge letdown when I found out. I was in Oklahoma and given a talk, and I thought, this is like, I'm going to meet a bunch of cowboys. Like, that's how I felt about it. Like, I was like, everyone's going to ride up on a horse. They're going to probably have like a steer, like lassoed and like slung over their shoulder. They're going to cook it for dinner. These are the people I'm going to meet. Giant pickup trucks. And the weather got inclement for an hour and people were like, we can't come. And I was like, wait, what? Just like, oh, it's, and I was like, wait, I looked outside. I'm like, you're kidding. Like, this is going to stop you? I thought you were cowboys. But turns out rough and tumble people unless any kind of precipitation falls out of the sky. Then they're like, ah. And why is that exactly? Do you have any idea?
Well, it depends. Where did you hold that workshop?
You're asking me to remember where I was exactly.
Was it Oklahoma City, Tulsa?
I felt more north. I don't know what that means. Anyway, I don't remember. I feel bad for the people who were there. I'm not good at like words, names.
Your big city people are a bit more trepidatious about that sort of thing. When it comes to ice and the sort, I'd say we're a bit more cautious, but that's more so because a lot of Oklahomans do drive big pickup trucks.
I thought that. I was like, this is your time. Like, get out there.
But see, the issue with that is trucks like to fishtail. And unfortunately, Oklahoma doesn't get so much snow as what it does ice. And ice can be pretty scary to a pickup driver because you're fishtailing all over the place.
No
because
weight
your back's
in the back.
Not secured.
That's right. No weight in the
exactly.
back. I understand.
And because Oklahoma has crazy weather, we also, we actually call her bipolar. Nobody expects to constantly have a weight in the back of their pickup truck to prepare for a sudden, bout of ice.
I was just thinking if anyone ever says to anyone that, hey, it looks like you've gained some weight in your back part, you can just say, I'm trying to get ready for the ice. I don't want my ass end sliding out from under me. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so I'm interested about, what are you using as your slow acting insulin?
So I use Lantus.
Lantus. Okay. And your fast acting is probably Novo Rapid, I'm guessing?
No, it's Humalog.
Humalog. Okay. Humalog and Lantus, you're injecting. How frequently do you find yourself in inhospitable places digging around for fossils, and how long are you out there when you're doing that? How do you manage through that situation?
Okay, so usually about anywhere towards the end of June into late August, October is what we call the fossil season. It kind of depends on the wet season prior. So see, Australia doesn't really have intermittent rain in our area. It just kind of dumps everything in the beginning of the year in 1 week, and then you're left to deal with what you got for the rest of the year. So during that wet season, we can't really go look. But during the dry season, we can. And so what is that? There's like anywhere between 6 and 8 months time frame. And during those 6 to 8 months, Troy and I will go out every weekend. And, anywhere between 4 and 8 hours, we'll just be trekking along, looking for fossils.
Wow. And so you're pretty removed, I would imagine, from amenities during that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We're in areas of very patchy reception. We're well away from where emergency services can get to us quite readily.
What do you bring with you then to be ready for that? Do you ever spend the night?
No. Because our fossil areas are pretty close to us. So, we can just drive, about an hour or so away and come back the same day.
Gotcha. I'm going to ask you a question you don't have to answer. Have you ever found something that it was so exciting that you had sexy time out in the middle of nowhere?
No.
May I suggest that? Because it seems like that would be nice. Not that you need to take my suggestion.
Yeah. Well, it's been brought up before, but just the habitat isn't that nice. It's pretty
the dust
thorny
is a problem.
and everything.
I got you. And by it's been brought up before, you mean Troy brought it up. And by Troy brought it up, you mean every time you're out there, he brings it up. Is that what you're saying?
No, not every time.
Not every time. He probably has a calendar, and he's like, "Oh no, I said it last time. I'll skip this time. Bring it up next." For clarity, I would say it every time too. I'd just be like, hey, you know what we haven't done yet while we were out looking for fossils? There are so many simple jokes here that people are filling in their own head.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's fine. I'm trying to keep it friendly, but anyway.
Oh, I can only imagine what the listeners are thinking of right now.
I can't even say what I'm thinking. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
But no, I just it just seems very secluded, I guess, was my overall point.
Yeah.
And so
it is.
Right. So you're by yourself. What do you bring with you as far as like food to sustain yourself? And do you pack for the idea of like, what if we became stranded, if a car broke down or something like that?
Let's see. Well, I usually have a pack. My pack usually includes like, jelly beans. It's got, your glucagon shot. It has insulin. What else is there? We usually pack like a Fiber One brownie because they're like 15 grams.
Mm-hmm.
Some nut bars, which are like 12 grams. That's protein. And just every couple hours or so, we'll just find a spot of shade. We'll pull over, drink some water. I'll check my sugar levels, and then we'll proceed accordingly.
Does the process of looking bring your blood sugar down? Is it? I'm assuming it's like a lot of manual labor, right?
It's mostly walking, because you're looking in areas of erosion.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of wanting to let nature do the work for you because, the chances of you just picking a spot and digging in, the chances of you actually finding something are quite low. But if you kind of let nature do it for you and you just cover a lot of ground, you're more likely to pick something up. So there is that. And usually when we go collecting, it's interesting that no matter what my blood sugar levels are, they will drop down to about 4.6 and they will just stay steady around that point the entire time.
Do you feel like you just have your basal insulin really well?
Yep.
Figured out?
Yeah, I do frequent basal tests.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily tests, but I will do continual checkups. Like I'll do a lot of examinations of my blood sugar levels to make sure that it is in tune. Because if my basal's not set, nothing is set. I will get, correction doses off. I'll get insulin rebounds and everything. So as soon as my blood sugar levels start going wonky, the first thing I look at is my basal.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard me say, but I think that the basal is the base, and if it's not right, nothing else works, and it just makes sense. I mean, you're out wandering around like this for hours at a time, and holding a blood sugar around 85 is it's amazing. It's well done work. And so, how often do you have to adjust your basal insulin? Like a little more, a little less? Do you find yourself doing that?
I usually only have to do a major change about maybe once every 3-4 months.
That makes sense.
But, there will be some weeks where it's like, okay, I'm a little stressed from this. I might need an extra unit or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll see how that goes. Or, like this last week, I suddenly, I went through one of my major changes. And so I actually went from 24 units down to 15.
What precipitated that?
I'm not honestly sure. I mean, is there really any ever clear-cut answer with diabetes?
No, I was just wondering if maybe like, you, I don't know, threw away like your head and then you were like, there's less body or something like that. Like because it's a big jump.
It's interesting because it actually came at a time where I am more stressed because, it's the end of the semester, you have exams.
Mm-hmm.
I recently changed jobs. So there's a lot of crazy things going on right now. And yet, my basal insulin just my body just decided to be more sensitive to it.
Wow. That's interesting. It's cool. And how long did it take you to figure it out? Did you have some lows and you were like, what is happening?
Um, Actually, no, I was having a lot of weird highs. So usually I actually have my insulin to carb ratio and insulin sensitivity factor pinned down, in so much that I can do a quick calculation and I can tell you exactly where 1 unit of insulin will bring me approximately within zero 0.2 millimole,
No.
or how many grams carbs will raise me millimole wise. I actually have a graph for conversion factors that works really well based on a variety of scenarios. Just simple math, simple algebra, conversion factors. But once you nail down your insulin to carb ratio and your insulin sensitivity factor, it makes it really easy. It's basically kind of like doing the bolus calculator, your bolus calculator on your insulin pumps. I'm
Right.
just doing it manually.
Where did you
And I'm
learn
adding
that?
in a few others. A lot of reading.
Gotcha.
So I read a lot of scientific reports. I read about the equation of dividing 460 by your total daily dose to get your insulin to carb ratio, and then 130 divided by your total daily dose to get your insulin sensitivity factor. And then, I never necessarily liked algebra or chemistry, but I was proficient in them enough that I put two and two together and I was like, hey, this is actually really simple algebra and conversion factors. In fact, in chemistry, there's a graph showing how to easily figure out your conversions from like millimoles to particles to units of measurements or whatever. And basically, I just took that concept and I plugged it in with diabetes. So my graph shows millimole units, insulin units, and grams of carbs. And in between those conversion factors, you have your insulin to carb ratio and insulin sensitivity factor. And you use one of the two or a combination of the two to get from one to the other, depending on your situation.
Wow.
So,
Geez, that's fascinating. Like, and you figured this all out in the last year?
yeah.
My God. I told you were more like 35. That's why you were so like, I would take that. In the beginning, you're like, 35 sounds right for me, I think. That's really uncommon for people to figure out on their own to begin with. And I think at your age, it makes it a little more uncommon. Does your period change things for you?
Not really, because I actually have the implant. So that actually keeps my hormone levels pretty darn stable, thankfully.
Is that the ring? Am I thinking of the right thing?
No, I have the implant on.
Oh, the one that literally goes in your arm.
Yep.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep, and it works really well for me. The only thing I noticed is before my diagnosis, I had the Nexplanon, which is like the same thing, just different brand. And I found that at the end of after a certain amount of time, it starts scaling back on how much of whatever units it gives you. And so interestingly, when I had to go in for my Implanon renewal, I noticed, I did the calculations because I noticed that my insulin needs increased by a fair bit. And funnily enough, they doubled, which accounts for like the difference between the two, because it was a fresh implant. So it was putting out more units of whatever chemical or hormone it puts out in you.
Right.
So yeah, once I figured that out, I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to double my insulin dose because this is double the dose of
the hormones,
whatever I was on.
But it becomes consistent and stable.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. It only took like the first week of fluctuations. And then after that, it was like, okay. this is a new implant. It's putting out, twice the amount or whatever of the former implant, because when I was diagnosed, I was at the end of the life of the last implant. So once I did that calculation, I was like, okay, well, my insulin needs have probably doubled. And I increased it, and sure enough, it matched.
Wow, that's really cool. I looked it up here because I knew what you're talking about. It's there's only two of them, right? The Nexplanon, or there's another
Nexplanon.
Nexplanon, is that the one you use?
It's the first one I had. I currently have the Implanon. I think they're the same thing. They're just different brand names.
Gotcha. And this little, how long is it? Like, I can't tell.
I don't know. It's like an inch and a half long.
Okay. And it's just inserted. Is it injected, or is it inserted surgically, or how do they do it?
Yeah, it's sort of like they make a small incision and then it like injects itself in.
That's crazy. And it lasts for years, right? Yeah,
it lasts for 3 years.
Wow. So it's funny you brought that up, because I've been looking for a birth control because somebody brought it up to me the other day. I just don't want to get pregnant. I think at my age it would be difficult. But somebody brought it up the other day and said, "Hey, when your daughter gets older, I got a lot of stability in my blood sugar by using an IUD." It was a note I got. I get the strangest notes, by the way, and that was one of them, which I was really grateful to hear about. And it just made sense instantly. It's like, yeah, this just, gives it, I don't have, I forget how this implant or this thing, it's probably not an IUD. I'm probably using the wrong words, but it's like a ring or something like that has, I guess, hormones on it, right?
Marina?
Yeah, listen, something like that. Like, it, again, a lot of emails, and I'm scanning that. I'm like, this one's super interesting. Like, a person has taken the time to write me to say, this might help your daughter when she gets older. And I was like, oh, I'll keep that in my head. But then you just brought it up too. And it makes total sense that you take that fluctuation away. It gets easier to manage your blood sugars. That's very, very interesting.
Precisely. The only caveat with that is each birth control, each person reacts differently. So the Implanon works perfectly for me, but it may not for other people.
Sure.
I know other people have had issues.
Yeah, like they grew like a third arm or something like that, or?
No, I think the most common issue is inconsistent bleeding.
Weight gain.
Some people can weight gain.
Right.
But side effects are to be expected when you're changing the chemistry of your body.
Yeah, you would think. I guess it becomes a trade-off at some point if you decide you want to do it.
Yeah, it really does. When you're taking any sort of medication, you have to you have to weigh the benefits versus the side effects.
Yeah, no kidding. Huh. All right. So how much of your stability is based around your diet, do you think?
None at all. There will be some weeks where, I'm a star pupil. Well, not even some weeks, even some days where I'm a star pupil, and I'll just sit there and I'll eat my meat and my veggies or whatever. And then there's other days, like the other day, I had, don't judge me. I had donuts for breakfast. What did I have for lunch? I had a bee sting for lunch, which is like some sort of pastry with cream. And then I had carbonara for dinner. All terrible carby things.
all the same day. You just went for it.
But I never once went above 6.8.
Wow. That's just with your management of insulin.
Yeah. So I do have like some markers. So I try to aim for non-diabetic levels because I know a lot of diabetes educators, endocrinologists, doctors caution against it because, they think that's too low for you. But my thinking is okay, well, if non-diabetics can achieve that, and as long as they're, as long as I'm stable and not really dropping below those numbers, then why wouldn't I want to try and aim for non-diabetic levels?
Listen, that's what I do here. Yeah. So,
So my range is between 70 and 130. And from here, I don't know the conversions. But I think, what is it? A normal non-diabetic is between 5 and 7.2 1 hour after eating. And then 3.8 to 6.1 2 hours after eating. So I try and match those patterns.
See, that seems
myself.
reasonably. So you're saying between 90 and 130, 5 and 7.2. I have to admit, and I'm going to do an episode with Jenny about this at some point. When I first began doing the things that I do, the things that I talk about on the podcast and etc., I was able to have even tighter tolerances, like the idea of like any kind of spiking. I mean, not that you could really call 130 a spike, but a blip, right? I just was like, I can keep them all out. But once Arden became a full-fledged card-carrying lady, that was not as easy to accomplish. And I've really come to believe that there are people doing amazing things for young kids, with timing of insulin. But I don't know that that's a lifelong possibility all the time of that super steady, 85 blood sugar all day long. It's a ton of work that goes into it. And I don't know, like, what I'm not sure of is the love of a parent who can think of a way to do that and to actually keep up with it. People don't generally feel the same way about themselves when they get older as parents feel about you. Like, you don't realize it when you're young, but nobody cares about you more than your mom and maybe your dad. And so once you become an adult, like, to keep your blood sugar at 85 constantly, I think you would have to have a fairly strict restriction of carbohydrates to accomplish that. But I agree with you. I don't know that there's anything wrong with a blood sugar going to 130 for a little while and coming back and having a couple of gentle rolling hills throughout the day. That seems very reasonable to me, and it's very doable. I have a question: did your concepts lead you to liking the podcast, or did the podcast lead to the concepts?
Admittedly, my concepts led to the podcast.
That's what I would think. Yeah.
It was my, I love learning as much as I can to incorporate my own sort of, see, my way of handling diabetes is knowing it is being able to battle it. So I decided, as soon as I was diagnosed, I realized, hey, I don't have to feel icky anymore. I actually have tools within my grasp and knowledge that can be obtained to reverse this around and lead a completely normal life. So I just dove head in to anything and everything I could, research papers and everything, to formulate my own concepts. And then, as I said before, I subjected myself to my own experiments. So now I sort of have like guidelines by which to direct myself as to when to act, when to, ease up, for a more holistic view of my health. And then, just in all of that, it was just inevitable finding through Facebook, tips from fellow diabetics. And then, of course, the podcast was mentioned, and that's really how I came across it.
That's what I mean, from talking to you for the last hour, I didn't think you were going to say, oh, I was lost until I found you. I thought you were going to say, I found you because it was a like-minded idea to what I was already doing.
Yep.
That's excellent. That's very exciting. And you found all that on your own, just like reading research and figuring things out. That's really, like, I would applaud for you, but that seems weird because it's a podcast. If I started clapping right now, people like, there's a weird noise at the end of the show. I don't know what it was. But seriously, like, somebody should stand up and clap because that's really well done. Good. Do you handle everything like this? Or are you a bit of a mess in other ways?
Yeah. It's pretty much how I tackle life. I can't stand. Well, I admit that there are always going to be some things that can't be known, but those things that can be known, I want them to be known so I can figure out how to deal with them.
That's really cool. And by the way, for anyone listening, jump back a couple times to hear Oklahoma come right out of Skylar's mouth. She said, "I can't." It just literally went like that for a second. I thought you were going to get the vapors and start fanning yourself. I was like, oh my God, we're going right into we jumped right back into the dialect from Oklahoma. You have a really interesting accent. It's a neat blend. It really is. Do you think you'll stay in Australia, or do you think you'll finish up uni and drag Troy to? Not to Oklahoma, because what are you going to do if it rains? You know?
Yeah. To be honest, I'd be happy visiting America, but I think I'm really happy with the way Australia deals with diabetes over here. And, because diabetes is obviously a big part of my life, I wouldn't say it dictates it, but it definitely, I think Australia better supports it.
No, that's really cool. That's amazing, actually, that you found that. You only had to fly like a whole day to get there. Do you come home ever? Like, how do you see your parents? Is it like video stuff?
Yeah, I pretty much voice messaged them. They came over and visited last year. But otherwise I haven't been back to the States since July 29th of 2017.
Wow. Did your dad try to shoot a wallaby while he was there or something? Because, Americans love to shoot things.
No. He was more keen to try and pet one.
Gotcha. I have to be honest right now. If you showed me pictures of 3 different animals, I am not 100% sure I could pick a wallaby out. So I don't know why that.
A wallaby kind of looks like a smaller kangaroo.
Hold on a second. This is how we're going to end this episode, with me trying to figure out what a wallaby looks like. All right. So I've figured out the spelling. So we're halfway there. Somebody wants to know if you can have them as a pet. That seems like a poor idea. So it's very cool. Oh, wow. If you just told me it was a kangaroo, it was short, I'd be like, oh. If you told me this was a baby kangaroo, I wouldn't know the difference. Are you sure it's not? Maybe you guys are just confused.
Yeah.
Do you think I figured out that wallabies are actually just baby kangaroos and no one else knows? I think that seems
no. I'd say it is a pretty reasonable assumption.
Skylar, I like you. You have not let me get away with any bullshit whatsoever while we were talking through this entire hour.
I'm sorry. I am terrible when it comes to sarcasm. Like, no. I can even understand, when I can pick up that somebody's being sarcastic to me, I will still give them an honest, direct response in relation to the thing they're trying not to be serious.
Listen, you were terrific. I wasn't saying it in a bad way. I was just like, you'd never, like, I was like, oh God, I'm married to this girl. That's how it felt to me. Exactly, because you were just like, you were not letting anything go. And I was like, oh, here we go. I already have women in my life who treat me this way, Skylar. I don't need more.
Oh my goodness. It has been such a struggle. That's been one of my biggest struggles here in Australia, is everybody is sarcastic here and their tone of voice doesn't give it away like we do in America. So in America, we kind of, exaggerate our head movements or, exaggerate our tone of voice to indicate that we're being sarcastic. Mm-hmm. And over here, they just, they don't give any indication whatsoever. I
have to tell you that away from this podcast, I am proud of how dry my sarcasm is. I'm only happy when no one understands what I'm joking about. That is my happiest place ever. It's not great in personal relationships, in case you're wondering. but you should. I am never happier than when I say something I completely don't mean and everyone believes it. I really appreciate you doing this. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you were hoping to get to?
No, not really. I was a little surprised you didn't ask about corrections, but I mean that's sort of a touchy subject in and of itself.
Well, hold on a second. Let's get to that. I'm not. Can you go a couple more minutes?
Yeah. Right. I am usually up till like 2 or 3 in the morning anyway, so it is no big deal for me.
Fill me in. You go.
I just notice a lot of people have issues with corrections, and I probably do a bit. I'm a bit more daring in my approach. So again, I'd say I probably do what you do with the insulin pump with Arden,
Okay.
but I do it the best way I can with manual daily injections or multiple daily injections. So with multiple daily injections, we don't have the option of stopping insulin or delaying it or extending it or any of that.
Mhm.
Our two options are give yourself a correction or give yourself more food.
Right.
That's the only two weapons in your arsenal. So with corrections, to be able to stay within my target range, I kind of go off of how quickly I'm rising. So I'll just walk you through one of my concepts that I arrived to.
Okay.
This is the way I think. Insulin takes about 10 to 15 minutes to work. Food absorbs in about 40 minutes, depending on what type of food you have. This is just an average. Obviously, you would suit, whether or not you have fat and protein or not. But generally, food peaks in about an hour. So that's why you pre-bolus about 15 minutes or so, 10 minutes for me, I have found.
Mhm.
If I pre-bolus 15 minutes, I started dipping and then rising a lot because that insulin, didn't actually cover the carbs. It dipped me a bit. So basically, if I am still trending up between 45 and 50 minutes after eating, so I'll have say a slight arrow up, and I'm around the 6.5 millimole per liter mark, just before I hit my 7.2 mark 1 hour after eating. Because I want to try and stay under that mark, I will go ahead and give an additional small bolus, depending on how carby the meal was or not. If it was just, quick in and out carbs, I might scale it back some. If it's just your standard carbs, I'll give the standard amount. And that additional bolus actually usually kicks in immediately for whatever reason and starts fighting those additional carbs to bring me back down. So say I'm going slightly up 45, 50 minutes after eating. So at 6.5 millimoles around that time, I'll usually give 20% of whatever my initial dose was. Or if I'm rising rapidly, double arrows up or whatever, 30 to 40%. And then, I will be prepared generally to kind of lay down a small blanket of carbs to slow down that drop if I start seeing myself drop. So I kind of do the reverse. I can take that 20% of the initial dose, if I have straight arrows down and go okay, I might, take some carbs to kind of cushion my landing or whatever. But I know most endocrinologists, doctors, whatnot, they don't want you to do a correction until 2 hours after a meal. But at that time, you're already suffering from a high or low.
Yeah.
So, you're generally speaking, if the arrow's going up or straight up, that means that my initial bolus or timing was wrong. And more often than not, I can rule out the timing. And, I
Go
can
to
usually,
the amount.
yeah,
And then
I can figure, I can figure out that it's the amount. So
right.
I will go ahead and give that additional amount that I should have probably taken.
And then it's not stacking if you need it. And that's
exactly
right.
Exactly. And I hardly ever have any issues with it. Because it takes about 4 to 5 hours completely to leave the system. If it does drop me, it's usually at that very, very tail end where it's just starting to really slow down. And I can really see that. And it's okay, throw in 3 or so carbs and that'll raise me half a unit. And then, I'm sitting easy the rest of the day.
How often do you find yourself in that situation where you have to bump a little bit after a meal?
hardly ever, actually.
I was going to say, I bet you that doesn't happen to you much because probably once you see it happen a couple of times, you adjust your ratio for the meal then.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I would say it's very similar to what you do on a pump. I just do it manually and I keep a close eye on it as you would regardless of MDI or not.
Yeah.
And and I'll just cushion my landing with carbs if needed, but more often than not, it's not needed because that's insulin I needed anyways.
You are the right person to be listening to this show. That's for sure. That's excellent. I couldn't agree with what you said anymore. I don't watch, I've boiled it down to ideas like don't watch a high, do something about it, catch it with food later if you have to, make an adjustment if it keeps happening. That stuff all to me just makes sense. It's, have you ever considered, I'm not pushing you, I'm wondering, because of how you talked about it, it seems odd that you don't have a pump.
That I don't have a pump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at some point I may try a pump, just because I want to be able to subject myself to everything and say, I've tried everything.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment I am happy.
There's nothing wrong with it. I was just, it just seems like you would have fun manipulating basal insulin and stuff. Like I just see you at home going, oh my God, the greatest thing happened today. I did a temp basal decrease.
Yeah. See, with my chances, I'd probably hit the pump with a hammer.
while you were out there looking for bones in the ground.
Yep.
Gotcha. I hear you.
I can't even begin to tell you, like, you damage things that you don't even think would be damaged. Like I had to go and fork out like $800 for a new set of glasses because in digging for bones, I didn't realize that the dust, the dirt was kicking back in my glasses and scratching them. Or prepping your fossils particularly. That would just be my luck.
Again, this dust is causing problems more than what I've pointed out earlier. I hear what's happening. Yeah. I gotcha.
But I mean, the reason I brought the corrections up is because it amazes me with a lot of people with manual daily injections, they have issues with that. And it's like, okay, well, if the pump, a lot of people say the pump mimics the pancreas best. Well, if that's the case, then why don't you do the manual version of what the pump does?
Mm-hmm. Don't you think they're just trying to avoid injections though?
Yeah, but initially I would say yes, but after a bit of time, you hear of a lot of people say that injections no longer bother them.
So why not just
do it? So why not just do it?
I think it doesn't occur to them. I think that they get stuck. They get stuck in that idea of like, listen, I count my carbs, I put in the insulin, I wait 3 hours, I test, and then I look and I correct if I have to. That's what I've been told to do. I'm still alive. That's
exactly.
What I'm doing. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
I hear you.
It's because they were told to do it. And that's the biggest issue I have with that is because diabetes is, I forget which doctor it was, maybe Val Wilson or something like that. Basically said that diabetes is the only chronic illness where the patient has to do the majority of their healthcare decisions on a day-to-day basis. It is impossible to think that an endocrinologist or diabetes educator can make half the decisions that we make during that day. So why, would you, it just amazes me that, why you would listen.
Watch a bad outcome and then do it again. Yeah,
exactly. Precisely. And
seems
then
like madness.
Keep repeating it and not change it.
Right. Well, everybody isn't in the same boat with their curiosity, intellect, even, you know what I mean? Like ability to figure it out. Like you described reading some things and some simple math. And I guarantee you that there were plenty of people listening to that. And was like, I did not think that was simple, what she said. And it's just because some people's minds just don't work that way. Mine doesn't. Like
Yeah.
this whole
Yeah.
podcast exists because I
Yeah.
don't understand that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I think just trying to think of what I'm
It's-
wanting to say. It's not saying anything against, their willingness or not to engage in that. I think
no, you
there's
get
just a
lulled
lot
into
of
it. You do.
yeah,
Right.
you do. And I think there's a lot of stigmatism that, you can't disagree with the doctor or anything. You can't take diabetes management into your own hands. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're only supposed to listen to the textbook or whatever.
Right.
But I think what I'm trying to say is that diabetes, because of the very nature of what it is, it demands a more dynamic management system.
Hey, you need to be active.
So if you want to do well with it, then you have to be willing to
be involved.
Be involved.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean, completely fly in the face of what your doctor's saying or, any of that. By no means. I'm saying find a doctor that has a concept, has the concept that, diabetes is unique. It's very dynamic. It's going to require dynamic managing methods. And, to be there to support you, to basically to enable you to manage it on your own.
Yeah.
Make the decisions that you need to make to manage yourself well.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And I very much appreciate you coming on and doing this and taking this extra time at the end to go over what you said. I think it's important. People, you gotta be involved. You can't just watch numbers and hope. It's, you have to do something. And if you don't know what to do, you have to step back and figure out what it is that's happening. And if that's not clear to you, then find somebody that can help you, but don't just stare at it and spend the rest of your life thinking, my blood sugar just goes to 250. That's what it does. I get 400 once in a while. It happens. Like I cannot even begin to tell you
400
that 400, 22.2.
Ouch.
Yeah, that probably
I don't think I've ever had that recorded.
Right.
As of yet.
It'll happen at some point, but you're also on injections.
It will.
So it's not like you have a site that can go bad on your pump or something like that. So there's some stuff like that. But I'm just going to tell you that the last time Arden's blood sugar was that high, I don't know when that was. That is not something that just randomly happens to us. And it's not luck and it's not magic. It's on purpose. I stopped that from happening, and so could everyone else. So you just need to have a couple of tools and then know when to use them. That's pretty much it.
Exactly. I think diabetes management needs to lean away from, stagnant, hey, okay, do this, adjust this, see you in 6 months. I think it needs to be, okay, you need to look out for this, undo this when you start seeing this, maybe try out this. They need to be. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think for me, my three main concepts, and I think this is mentioned on your podcast, is diabetes problems, blood sugar level wise, are usually either due to miscalculation of an insulin dose, miscalculation of the timing, or miscalculation of the carb count.
Yeah.
And, obviously, if you didn't get the results you want, then you need to eliminate go through the process of elimination to figure out which one did you in.
Yep. It's timing or amount or a combination of both. That's just how I think of it. Like it's you use the right amount, the wrong time, the wrong amount, the right time. That's not going to work. It's got to be the right amount at the right time. That's it.
Yep,
and
precisely.
It sounds super simple and it's not, but it is. And once you figure it out, it's one of those things that you'll think, I can't ever believe I struggled with this. I just have it now. But in the run up to just getting it can be painful. So,
I could not think to succinctly sum it up more aptly.
You should have a podcast, and then you would figure out how to say a whole bunch of words in 3 words, because if you don't do that, nobody can remember it. And I know that because I couldn't remember it. Trust me, I dumbed this stuff down for me first, not for you guys. And then after I could follow it, I was like, oh, I bet you somebody else could understand it this way. So, Skylar, thank you very much. I'm going to go. I have another recording in a little bit, so I need to get ready for that.
That's fair enough.
But thank you so much. Huge thanks to Skylar for coming on the show and sharing her story. Also, I'd like to remind you that if you find yourself listening to stuff like this going, oh, I wish I knew how many 5 millimoles were. If you go to juiceboxpodcast.com, right up there at the top, you can click on A1C and blood glucose calculator. There's a quick conversion calculator there that will also help you see what your average blood sugar means in A1C. It's very cool. Like I'm here now. So if I type in that my average blood sugar was 123, it tells me in an instant, Scott, that's an average A1C of 5.9. Isn't that cool? So let's say your A1C was 6.6. That would mean that your average blood sugar is 145 or 8.1. It does all those calculations in an instant, thanks to a very lovely listener who built this beautiful calculator for me. Again, it's at juiceboxpodcast.com. And at the top, you just click on A1C and blood glucose calculator. If you're considering going to the T1D exchange to fill out the survey, I want to personally thank you. It's very valuable for people living with type 1 diabetes, and it's incredibly helpful for the show when you do so. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. Those diabetes pro tips are at diabetesprotip.com or right there in your podcast player beginning at episode 210. Lastly, I'd love to thank you for listening and, of course, for sharing the show with other people. And let you know that in episode 418, I'll be leaving a link that you can go to watch my blood sugar in real time. So I'm going to wear a Dexcom G6 for as long as I can so that you can see what a working pancreas looks like while it's working. So thanks to SugarMate, I want to thank Josh, the owner of SugarMate, for helping me do this. You'll be able to see my blood sugar live at juiceboxpodcast.com, but there's a specific link you're going to need. So you'll get that in episode 418. My idea here is that if you can see how a pancreas handles things, it might help you to understand what you're shooting for. That makes sense? As a person using insulin, I know there can be this pressure to just, keep the line completely flat all the time. But I thought maybe if you could see that sometimes someone's blood sugar goes to 130, 140, and then comes back down again, I thought that would be really helpful and kind of comforting. So I've set this up. I'm going to thank Dexcom for giving me the gear that I needed. And of course, Josh from SugarMate for helping me put it online. And I'm excited to show it to you. So that information will be in episode 418. And then after that, I'm going to show you the blood sugar of someone who is pre-diabetic, has some insulin resistance. And then I'm going to be looking for people who are really great at bolusing for certain meals to put their blood sugars live online during the bolus so we can watch them bolus for these meals. You'll be able to see pictures of the food and when the insulin goes in and how everything reacts. I think that'll be really cool. And I'm going to be doing the same thing, by the way. When I put my food in, you'll see a photograph of what I ate that'll correspond with when I ate. Anyway, I think it's a really great idea. I'm super excited for it. That information will be in episode 418, which is coming in just a day or so. Thanks so much for listening to the Juicebox Podcast. We'll be back soon. Talk to you later.